guys? What I've got for you today are a couple of neck plates from a viewer of mine. I'm going to put a link in the description to this guy's channel because he's kind of a guitar tech. He does a bunch of custom guitars basically, and he rewires them and everything. The guy's a genius with a soldering iron. I'm pretty jealous actually. Wish I could do some of those wiring jobs that he does. Anyway, we're going to turn these black. And if you look at them, you can see they've got a logo embedded in the surface there, engraved or whatever the case may be. And as you will know if you've watched my videos, or if you know much about painting in general, you have to abrade a surface before you paint it. It's pretty important that you scuff it up a little bit. These are really shiny. Don't worry, that was the back that I just dragged across my wooden table. These are really shiny, so paint won't just stick to that. And it is a pain to sand in there. You can kind of get at that with steel wool if you want, but what I'm going to use, and what I recommend for stuff like this if you have access to it, is a sandblaster. So I'm going to go sandblast these. I guess I'll bring the camera with me just in case. I might video some of it. And it's not actually sand that we use here in mine, or I shouldn't say mine, ours, because sand is they're typically coarse. You can get finer grained sands, but we use aluminum oxide, and it's a very, very fine kind of dusty powder, and it basically makes a very smooth finish. So that'll be the ideal surface for me to paint these. Yeah, I don't have anything else important to say about that. Let's go sandblast these things. Alright, boys and girls, so here's the sandblaster. In case you were curious, it's a big sealed unit. It's got a vacuum. It recycles this sand, which isn't sand, and you basically stick your hands in these gloves from over here. Kind of makes me feel like I'm playing with hazardous material or something. And you shoot abrasive at stuff. It's useful. Alright, so there we have it. Not shiny anymore. Backs still are, but I'm not painting that because there's no need to have an extra layer of paint making these things thicker. So, as you can see, this is now perfectly matte. It's got a very nice even look to it. If that camera ever focuses properly, you'll see that the engraving stuff's still there. Come on, camera, anytime. Alright, take my word for it, it's still there. Because this is metal, well, really with anything, but specifically because this is metal, I'm going to spray some primer at it now. I'm just going to use some enamel out of a can. It'll work just fine. It's self-etching primer, you know, the kind of stuff that you should be using for this. I mean, if this was a huge surface, I'd be getting probably a 2-part primer sprayed through a gun. But for something small like this, it doesn't make any difference, and you don't ever put primer through an airbrush. That's a hint. Don't put primer through your airbrush. So a spray can is going to do us just fine. Then, as per the usual, I'm going to be using a waterborne paint. So because I'm using the enamel primer and a waterborne paint, I need to give that primer time to dry completely first. You don't want to be, if I was recoating with say another enamel, I would only wait probably 10-15 minutes unless there was some sanding required, which there won't be. But since I'm using waterborne rather, I'm going to let it dry completely, and then when I'm sure all the solvents are gone, so tomorrow, I'm going to scuff it up lightly with a Scotch pad, and then I'll be ready to spray my paint. Alright, so I got these primed now. They're looking nice and smooth, and the primer's had plenty of time to dry. So obviously I'm not within the recoat window, and because I'm spraying with water-based paints over this, I wouldn't be in the recoat window. That would be a terrible mistake. Anyway, it's dry, and now, as always, the time has come to scuff it again. So because this has some grooves in it, rather than a piece of sandpaper, I'm going to be using a Scotch pad, or Scotch-Brite, or whatever the hell this stuff's called. And that's going to allow me to get into those grooves and scuff everything as much as I need to. You don't have to sand the hell out of these things. I mean, you don't want to take all your primer off. It's just enough to scuff it up so that the paint has something to grab onto. Now with grooves like this, it would also be a valid idea to use steel wool. And that's good if you're using a solvent-based paint over top. I'm using water-based paint, and the reason I don't use steel wool when I have water-based paint is because steel wool tends to leave behind little bits of steel. And we all know what happens when steel and water get mixed together. It rusts. So just in order to avoid any potential problems there, I don't use steel wool when I'm painting with water-based paint. Okay, so these have been scuffed and cleaned now, and it's time for the paint. And yes, I just about said stuffed and cleaned there. I don't know. Anyway, I almost never recommend using an airbrush to actually coat something. That's not what they're for, really. You can do surfaces in them, or with them rather, but typically you're not going to get a full coat of paint out of them. It's for graphics and stuff like that. The exception is for very small things. Sometimes I use airbrushes on large areas if I need to get some detail in, for example, a candy job. But typically the only time I use them to coat anything is when I'm working on small projects, or, sorry, I should have only said one, I should have said two exceptions there, when there are grooves and things where I need to hit the piece from several angles. So really, the airbrush is the perfect option for these because, first of all, they're tiny. And second, they have grooves in them. So in order to get paint in all those grooves, I'm going to want to spray at them from several angles. So I'm using a 0.5mm nozzle airbrush here because it's got a lot of flow. That'd be the word I'm looking for, I think. It's a very large nozzle size for an airbrush, so it's going to be able to put out a lot of paint, and it's going to be more like using a paint can or a paint gun. I don't know why I'm pointing over there. I don't have a paint gun over there right now. And yeah, that's going to allow me to get this done relatively quickly and do a good job. So I guess it would be logical for me to bring that camera in closer now, and you can kind of watch me paint this, even though you've seen me do this kind of stuff a million times. And we'll go from there. Starting by making sure I get all the edges, which is why I'm spraying lightly and from all sides, and I'm making sure that I hit this bottom edge, all of the edges of the logos that are facing me, and the insides of the beveling. So once I've got all the surfaces coated properly, I'm just going to, now I'm going to blow some air over it to kind of dry this stuff because it's water-based and it dries very quickly under airflow. And these are actually very well coated now because I've hit them from the 4 different angles. What remains is for me to check all the corners, and they all look good, and give it one more good go around the edges and one more coat from straight on, and then these will be ready to dry and get some clear coat. Alright guys, so our paint is now dry on these. They look pretty good. And all that remains is to clear coat them and polish them. Now obviously, if you've watched my channel, you know I've got several tutorials out there on how to polish clear coat. I'm going to be using my standard catalyzed polyurethane for this because it's the most durable that I have and it gives the best gloss. So I'm not going to waste your time and mine doing another polishing tutorial. I was, however, planning on showing the clear coating process for these because they're very small and I wouldn't be kicking up a lot of fume, if you will, and it wouldn't have the usual problems I have with clear coating and risking wrecking my camera. The problem, unfortunately, is that it's really, really cold in here where I do my filming. So I have to clear coat somewhere else, and that area is not conducive to me filming because it's small. It's warmer, but it's small, and it's just not going to work out, and it's going to fill with fume, so that it again wreck my camera. So what I'm going to do is use my touch-up gun, so 1.0 millimeter, a 1 millimeter nozzle setup, which is a little small for clear coat, but it's going to work perfectly for something this small. And I'm going to mix up my catalyzed polyurethane, 4 parts of the paint into 1 part of the hardener, exact same as I did for the 3rd part of my how to paint your snowboard video, and I think the 6th part of my how to paint your guitar video. I showed clear coating in both of those. In the guitar one I showed mixing it and everything. So I'm going to follow that same process. I'm going to clear coat these and polish them, and then I will show you the finished product. Now, as I believe I said at the beginning of this video, the guy who ordered these from me is a brilliant guitar tech, basically. He's a genius when it comes to wiring, and he's actually helped me out a lot. He's given me some information about wiring, which has made my life a lot easier because I've never been particularly good at it, and I'm improving thanks to him. So I really do recommend you check out his channel. The link is in the description. But as my own little personal thank you, I've made him a gift, if you will. Since he ordered some neck plates from me, obviously, and by ordered some neck plates from me, I mean asked me to paint some, I'm going to be sending him an extra one, which I made. This is kind of a little product development project I've been working on with custom metal components for guitars. I know I haven't really shown you any of them yet, but I thought this would be a nice touch. I know he's been looking to paint a guitar in green, so this is an aluminum neck plate with my kind of metal art finish on it, and it's got his logo engraved into it. You'll see that if you go to his channel. And then just for a little bit of accenting, I did the countersinking for the screw holes after it was painted so that they'd come out perfectly silver, and I made sure that the outsides were, well, also perfectly silver. So he's gonna have a nice green metal art finish on the front, and the silver edges and the silver screw holes, which hopefully you won't see much because he'll have screws in them. So I'm going to clear coat the 3 of those, and I'll be back with the finished product. Alright guys, so now we've got our finished product here. It's nice and shiny and mirror finish as it should be, and it has the logo still visible on the inside, and then of course the lightweight version that I did for product development that I'm giving the customer as a gift is also ready to go. So this one has that kind of holographic effect to it. So as you know, they've been coated with the catalyzed polyurethane, and they've been sanded down afterward up to 5,000 grit and then polished as per my usual polishing system. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to get these shipped out now. Let me know if you have any questions as always, and good luck with any part painting you have to do. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, or if you want to, or something, and see you next time.